So welcome to today's webinar of Transitioning from Early Start to Preschool, hosted by Parents Helping Parents and funded by First 5 Santa Clara County. Debbie Drennan, Master's in Social Work, will be the presenter today. I'm Judy Bauer, a PHP Program Specialist, serving as your host, and Brenda and Susanna are with me today co-hosting this event. We are collaborating with First 5 of Santa Clara County to educate professional and service providers, as well as parents, about the special needs population. I'll start by sharing a bit about our Family Resource Center, Parents Helping Parents, located in San Jose, California. We support and inform parents and professionals to become empowered advocates for the respective families or clients with special needs of any types and all ages. Founded in 1976, we serve Santa Clara County in the Silicon Valley area. You can explore our website, www.php.com, for our calendar of upcoming events, e-learning and information, support groups and resources. You can also sign up to receive our monthly e-news. PHP's email is info@php.com. and your concerns will be forwarded to the resource specialist who can best answer your questions. We have a multilingual staff, so don't hesitate to reach out. And you can also follow us on our Spanish, English, and iTech Facebook pages. Now today we will have time allocated to address general questions throughout the webinar. You can add your questions into the Q&A icon when Debbie pauses in her slideshow, and we'll take time throughout her slideshow to address some of those. If your question is very specific to a unique situation, we may need to discuss it offline to address your concern properly. If you do decide to use the chat icon, you have the option to select all attendees when you post your comment. Otherwise, it defaults to the panelists. If we don't get to your questions in the limited amount of time we have, please email either Debbie or me. Her email will be listed in the follow-up email to all participants in the day following the webinar. So, okay, let's see how many people we have now.
We're good.
Oh, we got 32, great. Okay, and so let me introduce Debbie. Debbie Drennan is the Early Start Family Resource Center Coordinator and an Assistive Technology Specialist at PHP's iTech Center. She has more than 20 years experience in the field, having received her certificate in assistive technology from Cal State Northridge in 1999. She has presented at both state and national conferences on many aspects of assistive technology. She worked for several years as a medical social worker before having children. She has one son with cerebral palsy and one son with ADHD and dyspraxia. As a parent of 2 children, both with unique needs, she became interested in and passionate about the potential assistive technology holds for so many individuals. Welcome, Debbie, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Judy. So again, you're here to listen about transitioning at age 3. And really what I'm going to do is I'm going to present information that you can then take back and use to help the families you work with. And if you are a parent, so that you are knowledgeable about what the transition process is, why it is the way it is, and hopefully make it a little bit smoother and easier for you. So just so you know how we are going to Zoom today, you are all muted and no video, of course. So please use the chat, though, to say hello and let people know who you are and what agency you're from, and if you're a parent, the ages of your children. Just because we are all here to learn from each other as well. There's a lot of people here that are professionals, and I really want to make sure we get your input and your information in as well. And please feel free to share what you know. That would be great. If you do have a question, please put it in the Q&A feature or post it in the chat. We have Brenda and Susanna monitoring both. And I'm going to ask one of them to go ahead and put my email in the chat now to start, so that people, if they already know they're going to have personal questions, go ahead and get my email down. Okay, so you have that information. And if you are joining by phone, I don't know if we have anybody here on the phone, but there are places within the presentation where I do stop for questions. and they're very well marked. And at that point, if I say, okay, are there any questions? And if you're here on the phone, please, please, please feel free to pop in and say, hey, I have a question. Unmute yourself and take it from there. Raise your hand. Let us know you want to go ahead and talk on the phone. And then tomorrow, just so you know, you will get an email as an attendee to the email you gave us with a PDF of this presentation, along with additional resources will be emailed to you, another PDF. So you will get all of that tomorrow. And feel free to share that information with others. Or if you have somebody, you have a colleague who wants to get that information, I'm happy to send that out to them separately. Okay, so that's how we are Zooming today. So again, parents helping parents. Let me give you a quick overview. I know Judy did a great job, but I really encourage you to look at our website. We have an amazing e-learning videos and resource directory and downloadable information, lots of great information for our program within PHP that serves the 0 to 5 population, which is Get an Early Start, of which First 5 is a part of. We do a lot of parent-to-parent support. We have mentor-parent matching, as we have multilingual staff, as Judy mentioned, and we have a lot of support groups. And you're going to see trainings in our e-learning library on IFSPs, IEPs, transition. We already have some great trainings in there on transition by Regional Center and the Santa Clara County Office of Ed. We have lots of trainings and videos on First 5 special topics already loaded up. So please explore our website. And I really encourage you to sign up for our monthly email newsletter. And I'm going to show you how to do that in just a moment so that you can keep abreast of our new stuff, because we're putting new stuff out every single month, especially in the age of Zoom, as I call it, because that's how most people are getting their information. So here's a picture of our website. And what I want to do is show you how to get to our program the easiest way. So you're on our website. You're going to go to the Get Involved tab of our website and subscribe to e-news. This is where you're going to go ahead and sign up for our e-news. We have it available both English and Spanish, and it's the ages 0 to 5. So just sign up. You get it once a month. We send it out at the beginning of the month so that you have information about what we're doing and what's new on our website that is specific to this population. So I wanted to share that with you. I also wanted to share with you how to get to our place on the website fastest. So you go to the Get Info tab and you click on the Early Childhood 0 to 5 tab. And this is where you're going to find all of the helpful information. Easiest way to get to it is you click on the links on the left, or you click within our website. And so we really encourage you to explore this, as we have a lot of information we want to make sure families are aware of and that you are aware of as well. I do also want to highlight a couple of upcoming things real quick, since I'm doing my little promo here. On September 19th, we are holding the first ever virtual Early Start Resource Fair on Saturday, September 19th from 10 to 11. I hope you can come and listen in. We have 12 great resources. We're hoping to get a few more in that are specifically targeted for families with children ages 0 to 5. And I'm really excited we have the Santa Clara County Child Care Group coming in. We've got KidScope coming up. We've got California Children's Services will be represented. It's really exciting. And I really hope you can attend and just listen for an hour and find out about some great resources that are available in the community now for you. And we also are doing, for the parents that may be out there, I welcome. We are creating a new training group called Parents for Change. And it's an advocacy, how to be an advocate for your child and how to make systems change. And applications are due for that September 18th. So if you're interested in learning how to be an advocate and how to make system change, this is a time to do it. And it's free. And if you attend all the 6 classes and do your homework, you will receive a stipend, a small stipend, as our way of saying thank you. So please, if you're interested, let us know and we'll sign you up. We'll get you signed up to that application process. Okay? So I wanted to highlight those 2 things for you. And that's Parents Helping Parents in a nutshell for now. So let me go ahead and provide information for those who may not be fully aware. What is Early Start? Just a quick overview before we get into that transition. so that you know why it's such an important piece. Early Start in California serves children from birth to 3 who have disabilities or are at risk for disabilities and their families. And by at risk of disability, it could be a child who was required ventilation upon birth or a CPAP. It could be premature children. Those are children that are considered at risk of delay. And so you don't have to have a delay, but you can receive services even if your child is at risk of delay. And that's Early Start. It's covered under something called Part C of IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So that's where the funding of it comes from. And here in California, it is the lead agency in California is the Department of Developmental Services, or DDS. Okay. The Early Start lead agencies in Santa Clara, now because every county is different, right, is DDS, which is the regional center, and also California Department of Education, CDE, or the Santa Clara County Office of Education. They both are the lead agencies for Early Start in Santa Clara County. And I put in a little tab here, CCS, California Children's Services, because they don't really lead Early Start, but they're a huge component for many of our families in Early Start is CCS. So I wanted to kind of highlight them as a lead agency, but not necessarily for Early Start. Okay. And in Early Start program, all families receive an IFSP, an Individualized Family Service Plan. So all children in Early Start have this IFSP. It is centered on the development of the child in their natural environment. And in their natural environment is where ideally services will be provided. And that's the key. Natural environment is the family home, right? That's the most natural environment for these kids. And that is where services will be provided, is in the family home. And it is an interagency approach to the child and to the family. And it includes the outcomes desired for the child and the family. And the other really key component is the services are tagged into the child and the family's routines. So it's all based on the family, the child, and their routines of the day. Each family is assigned a service coordinator, and their plan is reviewed every 6 months and updated at least yearly, sometimes more, but at least yearly, okay? And each plan must include a transition plan for eligible children. And actually, that's all children. So all children will get a transition plan that are in Early Start, okay? So before I delve into the meat of this meeting, this webinar, does everyone have any questions about Early Start in Santa Clara County? Because that was a quick overview.
Nothing in the Q&A, nothing in the Q&A bubbles here. I'm not sure about chat. Check with chat. Check with Suzanne and Brenda about chat.
Anything in chat, guys?
No questions right now.
Okay, fantastic. So let's move into transition, which is why we are here. So today we're going to learn what is transition and what is an IPP and who is eligible, and what is an IEP and who is eligible. You're going to learn about the parent rights in special education. And you're also going to learn a little bit about the options that are available if the child is not eligible for either an IPP or an IEP. Blah, too many acronyms here. All right, so that's what we're going to learn today. So let's start with introducing Lexi. We're going to be following little Lexi along throughout this presentation, and I'm going to be asking questions of you about Lexi so that you can sort of put the information I'm giving you to a practical person. So little Lexi is a 30-month-old toddler. She was recently diagnosed with autism. She is now receiving Early Start services. She receives the services of an early interventionist through the program, and she also receives the services of an ABA therapist through her medical insurance. And this is Lexi. So just think about Lexi as I go through this presentation today. And I'm going to be asking you some questions about her to see if you can remember Lexi and help out Lexi and her family. Okay? So let's just say the word transition refers to children who are moving from the IFSP, which is Part C funded IDEA, to children who are moving into IDEA Part B funding, or an IEP, an individualized education program. Okay, and that's what the transition is all about, is moving from one funding source to another. But anytime you're dealing with the government, there's processes and there's programs and there's paperwork. So that's what we're going to delve into here. So it is a very formal process. It begins at least 6 months prior to the toddler's 3rd birthday. Okay, and it's all about exiting the toddler from early start into their school program, if eligible. And it is required by federal and state law, and it is a family-centered approach. And that is that transition, okay? And these, I put down the California code so you have them to look up if you want, but that is what transition is, okay? So it starts with a notification. Every child in early start has this notification happen. And it's simply a notification from the early start coordinator, service coordinator, to the school district and the California Department of Education. And that's what starts this process, is this notification. So it's just a notification, right? And what is this notification? This notification has to happen no fewer than 90 days before the child's 3rd birthday, okay? And the lead agency, whether that be the regional center or if it's a child being served under early start under the county, that lead agency must notify the CDE and the child's local school district that child will reach the age of possible eligibility for Part B special ed and IEP. By when? And it is required of all toddlers in California who are receiving early start services. But parents can opt out of preschool services. That's always their option. But the notification is not an option. All toddlers get that notification. And essentially all of that's disclosed is the child's name, child's date of birth, and the parent contact information. And basically, hey, here's a child who's been in early start. They're turning 3 at this date. They may be eligible for special ed. And that's all it is. That's all it is. Parent doesn't have to do anything more than if they choose not to. But real important things here, the parent should probably choose to at least talk to the school district, because information from all assessments and tests to determine eligibility for the regional center services should be included in the IFSP under the Lanterman Act and special education. So the IFSP should contain all the tests, all of the assessments that have been done for that child, even if they're not been done by the early interventionist or the people funded under IDEA Part C. So if you have a child who, let's say Lexi, let's go back to Lexi. Lexi was diagnosed with autism not by an early interventionist. She was diagnosed with autism by a medical practitioner of some sort, correct? Whether it be a psychologist, psychiatrist, a pediatrician, somebody else diagnosed that child with autism. That information should be in the IFSP as part of that packet, right? Any other, like the ABA therapist is working with that child in the home, information from that ABA therapist on the child's progress should be included in the IFSP as well, because this is the information that the school district is going to need in order to determine if this child is eligible for Part B or an IEP, okay? Also in the IFSP should be included, if the child qualifies for an IEP, who is responsible at the school district? And if the child qualifies for an IPP under Lanterman Act, who is responsible for that child at that point? It should always include, all IFSP should always include review of the progress towards the child's outcomes and options for preschool. What is available for this family for the preschool setting? So what you need to know is that the transition plan is a part of the IFSP. It is not a separate document. So this is all embedded as part of the IFSP process. And every toddler in Early Start must have a transition plan in their IFSP at least 90 days before turning age 3. And that's the transition plan, right? So going back to Lexi, is she ready for a transition planning conference? What do you think? Yes or no? Raise your hand if you think she is. Good. Okay, good. Yep. Yes, you're right. Keep raising your hands if you think she's ready. Is she ready? I'd say so too. You're right. She's of age, isn't she? You're right. Good job. Yes, she is ready for that transition plan. Thank you. Go ahead and lower your hands now. Thank you. Yes, she is 30 months. That means it is 6 months before she is ready for her transition plan. Very good. There it is. Okay. So let's talk about the paperwork, because whenever you're dealing with the government and education, there's always a form for that, right? So let's talk about some of the forms the family has already seen, and some forms the family may not see, but are a part of the transition process that the families should be made aware of, okay? So the first form the family sees, and the family sees this form at the initial IFSP. So whenever that child is found eligible for services under an IFSP, they're given this form as part of their initial meeting for IFSP program planning. And basically, this is a way to let the families know that Early Start ends at 3, right? And that every child is found eligible for Early Start, is considered potentially eligible for special ed. And as part of that, there will be this transition planning meeting. And they will be referred to their school district of residence no later than 2 years, 9 months. Every family gets this at the initial IFSP, okay? And this way they are made aware that there will be this transition, okay? Again, what is required is that notification, that referral. What is not required is that the family allow the school district to receive anything else but that, okay? So here's where the family decides that they either consent to have the district attend the transition planning meeting and get all the information, or not consent to have the district there. Just send the notification, I'll figure it out later. And that they are aware, that they are made aware of that referral. If a family, and you're dealing with someone maybe who is a premature baby, comes home eligible for Early Start based on prematurity, the parents are going, oh, my kid's going to catch up. I'm not going to have, why do all of this? This is silly. And they say they do not consent. The child is now 2 years, 3 months. Parent can go back, you know what? I'm still seeing some delays and some concerns. I kind of want the district there. They can change their minds. They can go back and say, I do want them. So this is something they can change their mind on as their child continues to grow and develop. So make sure you let your families know that if they initially said no, they can say, you know what, I've changed my mind. I do want the district to be there, and let their service coordinator know, and they can re-sign this paper and get things going. Okay, so this is something to be aware of, that they may have initially said, no, my kid's just premature, he'll catch up. Or my kid, I'm not ready for that yet. So make sure that families know they can change their mind on this. Okay.
Debbie, I do have one question.
Yes.
From a parent here. If
Of
our
course.
daughter is attending a private preschool, are we eligible for any services or resources when she turns 3 and graduates from Early Start?
Good question. And I will get there. Yes, I will absolutely get there. I promise. That's coming.
Okay,
So
great.
hang on to that question. And if I don't answer it by the end, let me know. Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Perfect. Good question. All right. So here's another document families receive. It's called, this is the Transition Planning IFSP Conference Invitation. This is the document the regional center sends to the school district saying, hey, you know what, your child's going to be turning 3. We need to let the school district know. Here is the person at this school district, and a copy was sent to your district on this date. Okay. So it's just a way for the family to know that that notification has occurred. So they're going to receive this document when that happens. Okay. So they're going to get this. And this is if the family, this is where they send information to the school district. So this is your preschool referral and information packet, okay? And so if the family has decided they didn't want the school district to receive anything but the contact info, this is where they get the check of, on the middle of the page, family has chosen only demographic and contact info on this form be shared with the district. And again, if this is a child that is potentially eligible for an IEP, that can really slow down the assessment process because now it's on the school district to reassess from the beginning. They're not going to have any of the background information on that child. So again, it's up to the parent choice, but it can slow things down a little bit. Just be aware if it is going to be a child that is eligible, potentially eligible for an IEP. Okay. And those are the forms, because there's always a form for that, right? So when you're looking at developing that transition plan, the lead agency must ensure that all the program options are reviewed for that toddler, okay? And that'd be from when the child turns 3 to the end of the school year, right? That the family is included in developing that plan, of course, and that it has to be included no fewer than 90 days before the toddler's 3rd birthday. Okay, and as appropriate, information on steps for the toddler and the family to exit the Early Start program if that is needed, and any additional transition services the team identifies as needed by the toddler and family to make a nice and smooth transition. These are things that must be included in that transition plan during that IFSP. Okay, now for late referrals, so you have a youngster, let's say Lexi, and let's say Lexi didn't come into Early Start program until she was 33 months. Okay, so 3 months before her 3rd birthday. What's Early Start gonna do? Because Early Start, remember, has 45 days in which they can do their assessments to determine eligibility for Early Start, and then bam, right, the school district time comes up. So if that happens when there's less than 90 days or 45 days to go before the child's 3rd birthday, that initial IFSP can be the transition conference. Yes, your child is eligible. Yes, they're going to be transitioning. Yes, we've determined them eligibility, and bam, we're going to transition them now to school district if eligible. Okay. If the child is referred at 45 days or less, the conference is not even required, but the school district must evaluate even when the 60-day timeline, which we'll get into timelines in a little bit, goes beyond the child's 3rd birthday. So really, for those late referrals, this is kind of how it rolls. All right. And in that conference, again, in California, all children are considered potentially eligible, and all children are assessed if the family chooses by the school district. Family's approval is needed, and family can invite other people. The Early Start team should be there. The family should be there. The local school district, if the parents have agreed, should be there. But the family can say, I need my ABA therapist. I want my child care person to come. I need someone from the Family Resource Center who's been supporting me all along to come. And that's okay. You can have those people come to that conference, because the more information that can be shared amongst the team, the better for the child. So that's really important. You can invite these other people to that team to help you out, okay? And steps would be discuss with and train parents as appropriate regarding future placements and other matters related to the transition. And again, here's a plug for Parents Helping Parents, sorry. We have special education training. So if this is going to be a child that's going to be potentially eligible for an IEP, we do have training for families who are new to the IEP. They can certainly attend a training, and they're online. They don't even have to go anywhere. They can just watch videos and learn more about what is an IEP and how it can help my child. They can learn procedures to prepare the child for a change in service delivery, including helping the child adjust to a new setting or a new delivery program or the exit from the Early Start program. So if you have a child who has been receiving services in the home from one person and they've bonded with their earlier interventionist and they've bonded with these wonderful people, and now that child who, is going to need to unbond and bond with a new teacher or a new staff, you need to help that child prepare for that change. And that may be creating social stories and helping introduce them and showing pictures. And there's lots of ways of helping that child adjust to the change for them. Okay, but make sure that is discussed. This is a step in transition, right? And also to identify other services and activities for the IFSP team to determine any necessary support for that transition of that child and that family. Okay, so I'm going to come to a place for questions soon, I promise. I'll get there in just a few more slides. So hold questions till then, thank you. So at 36 months, one of three things will happen. One, the toddler is found eligible for continuing regional center services and also for special education services through the school district. Two, your toddler is found not eligible for regional center services, but is eligible for special education services through school. Or three, through the Early Start services, your child has closed their developmental gaps and is no longer eligible for regional center or special education services. But you're still concerned as a parent, as always, as you should be. So we're going to go into each of these in depth. Okay, we're going to go into each of them in depth so that we can get a better understanding of those three. Okay, so takeaways from this part: the IEP or an IPP should be written before the child's third birthday if they are found eligible. So the next set of paperwork needs to be written before the child's third birthday if eligible, or the plan for exiting the Early Start program before the child's third birthday. Okay. Now, because we're in the time of COVID, I need to talk about what's happening now with COVID. There was another temporary transition directive put out by the California state as of August 10th, 2020. And here's what it says. If the child turned 3 during the emergency shelter-in-place order, which was issued in March by the governor, and the school is unable to provide appropriate services due to that shelter-in-place, then the child can continue to receive Early Start services until the school can provide agreed-upon IEP services. This directive is now valid until 9/13/2020. They're looking at it on a monthly basis to kind of see where things are, and so it may be extended. We'll see. They may still receive Early Start services, but all the timelines remain. So they still need to make sure they have an IEP in place before age 3. And then they can agree that Early Start will continue because they're not able to meet appropriate services through the IEP. Okay, so none of the timelines change. But if the school district cannot provide the services that are appropriate for the child due to COVID, then Early Start services can continue. So no child should be without service. All right, that's the COVID as of today. Questions? Anything?
Okay.
Yes.
So going back to the previous question, you said you would answer it. So again,
Yes.
if our daughter is attending a private preschool,
Right.
are we eligible for any services or resources when she turns 3 and graduates from Early Start?
Yes. And I will get into that under the second part. Block number 2, I will address that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And other?
Yeah, through the chat, Debbie,
Yes.
there is a question. Michelle was asking if you were referring to notification to school district is the same as referral. I think you clarified
Okay.
afterwards, but
Okay.
if you want to add anything.
Yeah, the referral is a notification.
Okay.
And the notification, again, just has to include the child's name, birth date, and that they're, school district of residence.
Awesome.
That is the referral. The referral packet is if the family agrees that the district should have more information about that child. I
Awesome.
hope that made sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's another question. How, if you have any ideas about how home visitors can support with this process, that may be a question for the teams. But
right. Well, and what home visitors can do, they're a part of the team. So the home visitor can absolutely be a part of this in terms of supporting the parent, providing input that they may have seen during their visits to the home. They can always participate in any of these meetings. Absolutely. If they have valuable input or even just to support the parents as they're going through this process, that's great. Yes, okay. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then there was another question that I think you're going to talk about later, but it's about what happens when things fall through the cracks, like somebody is not notified about transition process and they reach.
Right.
So I think you
right. And let me just answer that really fast because that shouldn't happen, but we are living in an imperfect world and things do happen. Parents can also notify the school district. It does not have to come from the regional center. So if you have a child as a parent and your child is 2 years, 11 months, and you just get your diagnosis, you don't have to go to Early Start first. You can go straight to the school district. Or if your child is 3 years, 2 months and has a diagnosis, just go to the school district. You don't need to have someone do that for you. Okay, so
and that goes with another question that was here. That's what happens, right? If the child hasn't been evaluated, tested, and they are 3, what can the parent do? So
go to the school district. Contact your local school district. Say, I'm concerned. My child is showing some delays, and in fact, that's what I did. I have 2 adult children now, and for my younger son, he was in a private preschool and he was struggling with that. And I went to the school district for an evaluation and an assessment because I wasn't sure what was going on. And the first time they came out, they didn't see any issues. Second time I went back. Second time they came out, they agreed he had some concerns. And then they started giving him some therapy. And again, we can talk about, and I will talk about how that can work when they're in a private preschool.
Okay. So how many more do you want? How about just a couple more?
Let's do it. Let's get them over with because I have another applause too, but let's do it. Yes.
Okay. Next one is how do I get an IEP? I think you're going to talk about that later.
Right. That's going to be part 2. That's coming.
Okay. And just, is there any services offered through First 5?
Services through First 5, that's a really good question. First 5 is a conglomerate of people that are supporting families in the development of their child and their family unit. And services are offered through, I know early intervention is offered through Head Start and Early Head Start. I don't know if those are First 5 or not. And I don't know if I know some of the family resource centers that are supported by First 5 have early intervention as well. And early interventions who can help with the families. So here's where I'm going to ask the audience, because I know there's some FRCs here in the audience. If your family resource center that you work for has early intervention available, someone who can help a family see if there's an issue with their child, please pop your name in there. Go ahead and promote yourself. Okay, that'd be great information to share.
Great. And then there's some concerns about during COVID and districts, kind of delayed with testing. And
right. Again, timelines do not change during COVID. Period.
And we'll talk about what to do later.
Right.
coming up.
Coming up.
Thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome. So let me roll into the first block number 1, which is the IPP. Okay. So what is an IPP? An IPP stands for an individual program plan for regional center services. So who qualifies? Under the Lanterman Act, it has to be an individual who is over 3 years old and who has a developmental disability. And the definition of those are intellectual disability, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, autism, disorders similar to intellectual disability or disorders requiring treatment similar to intellectual disability. And this is a big and, it's never emphasized enough, but it needs to be emphasized more, that disability imposes significant functional limitations in 3 or more of the following areas of major life activity. That would be self-care, receptive and expressive language, learning, mobility, self-direction, capacity for independent living, and economic self-sufficiency. Realistically, age 0 to 3, those last 2, not pertinent yet. So they're going to look at the top bunch. So it has to be both the diagnosis and significant functional limitations in 3 or more of these areas. Okay? So the domains that an IPP can cover, in other words, what areas do the regional center services, what are they looking at this point? Okay, for children 3 and above, of course, they would include those domains in the level of home and personal care, education, but that's mostly going to go to the IEP world, right? Health, personal growth, recreation, and family unit, okay? And outcomes are developed to address those areas assessed and agreed upon needs. The priority of the Lanterman Act from 3 to 18 is keeping families together. That is a priority. So they're really going to be delving into that family unit and trying to figure out what's going to work best for that family in these domains to keep the family together and to keep that child growing. Okay, that's an IPP. Lexi, will she qualify for regional center services? Raise your hand if you think she will. Okay, 1 raised hand, 2 raised hands, 3 raised hands, 4, 5, okay. 5, good. And here's where I'm going to fool everybody. That's a trick question. You don't know yet. Go ahead and unraise your hands. It's a trick question. And the reason it's a trick question is because she may have autism, but we don't know if she has functional limitations in 3 or more areas. We don't know that, do we? We know nothing about her except her diagnosis. She receives ABA and early intervention. We know nothing more about her, so we don't know if she qualifies for regional center services. So she may not. And for the purposes of this presentation, she does not. Lexi has autism. But Lexi's autism impacts her mostly with her expressive and receptive communication and some of her self-care skills, and that's it. She seems to be doing well otherwise. She does not have functional limitations in 3 or more areas, so she does not qualify at this time for regional center services. Now, this isn't to say that when she is 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, they're realizing, gee, she's never really going to be able to obtain, economic sufficiency or whatever, or if there's more of a delay developing than we were aware of at 3. You can always reapply for regional center services, but she may not qualify at this time. So keep that in mind. Just because you may be working with a child who has autism does not mean they will receive regional center services. It depends on how they're doing. And same with cerebral palsy. There are many individuals with CP who it just affects one limb. That's not enough to qualify. Okay? So just because they have the right diagnosis doesn't mean they have the right qualifications. So let's keep that in mind. Are there questions about any of that? Any questions? Let's see. What do we got?
Not so far.
Okay, good. Okay.
No,
So
I think you're good to go. Continue.
Okay. Thanks. Great, thank you. All right, so I just wanted to verify. Perfect. So onward. to number 2, the big one, the IEP. Let's talk about that individual education plan that the school districts manage and who qualifies. Who qualifies for an IEP is a child with a disability, okay? And it could be a specific, and these are the categories in which they qualify under, and there's 13 of them, okay? And so the first one is specific learning disability. At these young ages, that's probably not going to come up. Realistically, you're not going to have someone who's got a diagnosis already of dyslexia. That's just not going to happen. But do know that is one of the categories. It could also be an other health impairment, such as ADHD. And this is how my son qualifies. My younger son qualified, is under his term ADHD. Okay, so he qualified as a child with a disability because he had ADHD. Children with autism qualify as a child with a disability. Children with emotional disturbances, so it could be a child maybe who has attachment disorder. They may qualify as somebody who has, who is a child with a disability. The biggest category at this age, though, is children with speech or language impairment. This is the huge category that most of the kids fit under. This category at this age is speech and language impairment. Okay, but also visual, blindness, deafness, hearing impaired, deafblind, orthopedic impairment, cerebral palsy, for example. They may not qualify for regional center, but they can certainly qualify for an IEP if appropriate. Intellectual disabilities, traumatic brain injuries, and children who qualify with multiple disabilities in multiple areas. These are all considered children with a disability. So Lexi, will she qualify for educational services? Will she qualify for an IEP? Raise your hand. Yep. Boy, that's going right up. Yes, of course. Yes, she will absolutely qualify for that IEP. Yep. Exactly. She qualifies. Absolutely. Yes. So she may not qualify for the IPP, Regional Center Services, but she definitely qualifies for educational services. Very good. Thank you. Go ahead and unlower your hands. Thanks. So the key elements of an IEP are a free and appropriate public education, or FAPE. Okay. I'm going to throw out some what I call noodle soup here, letter soup. So FAPE stands for free and appropriate public education. That's a key element. Another key element is appropriate evaluations. Another key element is least restrictive environment, or LRE. So the child can be served in the least restrictive environment, and that can include a private preschool. We're going to get there. Don't worry, I promise. It includes the parent and the child, if appropriate. At these young ages, not really appropriate, but they can participate in their decision making, right? And the decisions made at the IEP team. There are procedural due process, just as there is for an IFSP, there is for an IEP, and prior written notice is required. Just as it is for an IFSP, it is for the IEP. Those two stay the same, but those are key elements of that IEP, okay? And the purpose of that initial evaluation is they have to determine all areas of the suspected disability that should be addressed. So this can be even for children who don't have a diagnosis yet, right? Going to the fact that you're not sure what's going on, but you think something's going on with your child, you don't have to have a diagnosis to have them initially evaluate. So if you're not sure, if your child has something going on, maybe there are delays in language, contact your school district, say, and they'll assess, and they'll do that initial evaluation to determine if this is something we need to worry about. And that will determine whether that is a child with a disability. But the key focus of an IEP, remember, is what are the child's educational needs. So the IFSP is focused on the family routines and the family needs. The IEP now is about the educational needs of that child. And that's a pretty big bucket for children, but remember that is the focus, is the educational needs of the child. No longer the family routines are important, but it's now what can help this child educationally, okay? And prior written notice, which is required in both the IFSP and the IEP, is important because it tells you what's going to happen why it's going to happen or why it didn't happen, what they considered and what they said no to, and what the district used to make that determination. And I go back to that IFSP packet, that referral packet. That's why I really feel it's important for families to be comfortable sharing with the school district as much information as you can about your child, because that helps them. Because then they can say, oh, we use this, this, and this. But if they didn't get this, they can't use it. It's going to be on them. So try to be as open with the school districts as you can be, okay? Because all records used by the district are noted to the parent, what they use to make that decision. Any other factors they found relevant. And also you're going to get at that, for both of them, where you as a parent can obtain your procedural safeguards to make sure everything was done properly, and who you can contact about understanding your rights under both the IFSP and the ISP. Again, those are consistent throughout, okay? But that's really important with prior written notice. So the family will know why a decision was made, how they made that decision, and what they considered. And so that's really important, and that's going to be in writing for the family to look at. So you as home visitors and you as family resource centers can help make sure that they have all the information they can to make their determinations, okay? Especially in the time of COVID, right? It's hard to do something over the screen. They may not be seeing what you're seeing. And so it's really important that your information is shared as well, okay? Parents' rights in all evaluations is consent, right? I agree to this evaluation. And this won't happen too much, but assignment of a surrogate parent where needed, especially if it's a child who is in the foster care system. Confidentiality of the results. Anytime an evaluation is done, it goes no further than the school team and the parent. It's not being shared willy-nilly with everybody in the world, unless the parent determines it needs to be, and then the parent makes that decision. It has to be a non-discriminatory assessment, and they have to know their hearing rights. Again, that's all part of it, right? And an opportunity to examine the records that they use. So the parent has the chance then to also look at what the school did in that evaluation process. And if the parent disagrees with the school evaluation, they can get an independent evaluation as well and submit that to the school. And there is a process for that. And if that's something that a family wants to do, they probably want to contact us at PHP in our education department and really kind of make sure they understand their rights and how to do that appropriately. Okay, but the school will pay for that independent evaluation. Okay, and now a quick lesson on IEPs and 504s. You can have a child with a disability such as ADHD, for example, or dyspraxia, sensory processing disorder. Okay, and in order for them to be considered a child with a disability, it must impact them enough. So you can have individuals with ADHD who are actually fairly fine. They're doing okay. They've managed to figure it out. So they may not need a 504 plan or an IEP plan, okay? Or you can have a child with ADHD who needs some accommodations made so that they can be successful. And then they would just need a 504 plan. And then you also can have a child with ADHD who might need accommodations and modifications made. And those would be the kids who would have an IEP. And yes, a preschooler can have a 504 plan. Going back to my personal experience with my young one, who is not young anymore, once he was evaluated by the school district in his private preschool setting, and they determined, yes, he has a sensory processing disorder because that was his first diagnosis. The school district paid for him to attend occupational therapy specific, and I had to drive him there because he was in a private preschool. They weren't going to push in, to a private preschool, but they agreed to pay for occupational therapy to address his sensory processing disorder so that he could be more comfortable in a classroom setting. So yes, and that was through a 504 plan. So hopefully that helps answer some of the question you had. Can the school district provide services in a private preschool setting? Not in that preschool setting itself, but they can provide some services if you are willing to work with the school district and take your child to them. So, and we'll get a little bit more in depth, but yes, that kind of is the answer to that. So yes. So yes, a preschooler can have a 504 plan and receive services from the school district as appropriate. Okay. So how do you help a family, or how do you as a family prepare for that IEP meeting? First of all, who's attending? You will be notified who will be attending that meeting. And some of the people that will be attending will be someone from the school district who can make financial decisions about, yes, we'll pay for this. No, we won't pay for that. That person will be in attendance. The teacher, there will be a teacher attending. And at the initial IEP, you can have your early interventionists attend as well. So you can have a very full table of people at that first IEP meeting, right? But these are all people that can make decisions and plan for those goals. And you as a parent can invite anyone you need to provide support, to provide the team more information. Just notify the team, hey, you know what? I'm going to invite my, home visitor. I need them here because there's going to be great information they can share. If the family chooses to tape record, and they can, they just need to inform the school 24 hours in advance. And I actually encourage for the first few IEP meetings as a parent that your parent does record it, because, I remember those first few meetings, and you're just hearing what your child can't do, and it's like darts in your heart, right? And you're not here. You stop listening after a while because you just can't. So if you record it, you're going to rehear. You're going to be able to, when your emotions have stopped, you're going to be able to hear what was actually said, the full thing, right? So I really encourage tape recording. And it's really important to keep the focus on your child. Bring a picture, share a photo, up in the screen, have a picture of your child so that everyone remembers why they're there. And always try to bring out the abilities of your child to your team as well, because oftentimes I have an older child who has cerebral palsy. Once, they're focused on what he can't do based on his disability, and I'm able to provide, look what he can do. And oftentimes you can bring their strengths and help them with what they can't do using their strengths and abilities. So it's really important that everyone also talks about what the child can do and how can we use this to help the child be successful. Okay? And bring a picture. And it's okay too, as a family, to say, you know what, I need a break. Let's reconvene. My emotions have taken over. Because that happens. Totally happens. Okay? And there's many things that the IEP must include. It has to include a statement of that child's present levels of achievement and functional performance. And at 3, there's not going to be a whole lot for academic achievement. It's mostly going to be, how are they doing? What are they doing? How can we help them get ready for school? What's going to be working? Are they able to hold a pencil? How do they hold the pencil? Do they need work on scissoring? Do they need work on coloring? Do they need work on attention and focus so they can listen to a story being read? Those sorts of things come into play. Academically, how is their receptive? How is their expressive? That's what they're going to be looking at 3 years of age. And a statement of measurable goals, including the goals to be met. So you're going to see a statement of measurable, what we call SMART goals, and you're going to have those in there, and how that progress will be measured, and when reports of that progress will be issued. Because unlike the IFSP, where it's every 6 months, the IEP is more often than that. Usually you'll get progress reports more often than every 6 months. How is my child doing? So you'll get that usually a little bit more than every 6 months, so that you know how your child is doing, okay, towards their goals. It also includes any related services and supports your child might need. And I'll get into a list of, I'm sharing a list of those with you. And the extent that the child will not be able to participate with non-disabled children in regular classes and activities. The IEP is really focused on inclusion. They want your child, if appropriate, included in a regular preschool, if it's appropriate, thus Head Start. is really big, with including a lot of families with children with IEPs, because that is available to you. And then they're with non-disabled peers and they're learning from each other, which is really important. Okay. And any individual accommodations needed to measure those achievements and functional goals. So if you have a child with CP, they're not going to be able to stack blocks necessarily. So how are we going to know that they're progressing on a goal if they can't physically stack a block? What is the accommodation we need to do on that test so we know what this child can do? Okay, so that needs to be stated in the IEP as well as the when, the how, the who, and how often. Okay, those are really important that go in the IEP, because that way you as a family know who is supposed to be doing what by when and how often, and so that you can track and kind of make sure everything is happening as it should be. Even especially during this time of COVID, right? When you have to get online on Zoom with the speech therapist and the occupational therapist and the teacher and so you have to know when to do that, right? So this is really, really important. And the special ed cycle, we're going to go real quick, timelines, really, really fast. I'm going to go into timelines. So there's the referral by the parent or early start. The school district has 15 days to come up with an assessment plan. Okay, we see that this child's coming in from early start. We have 15 days in which to say, here comes the child. Here's our plan for assessing if that child is eligible for an IEP. Get it back to the family. The family has to sign that plan, and then the assessment starts. With the assessment, you have 60 days in which to do that assessment. Again, these timelines have not changed with COVID. They are consistent. So you have that 60 days regardless. The school district has 60 days to assess the child and then hold that IEP meeting and present their assessment results. Again, prior written notice means the family's already seen the results and can have a good discussion at that IEP team meeting. If the child is determined to be eligible, they're going to talk about placement services, and they're going to talk about, and this is reviewed every year. And then every 3 years, they're going to reevaluate, is this child still a child with a disability? Okay, and that's sort of the cycle of assessment. Okay.
Okay, Debbie, I'm just reminding you that you're halfway there. It's 11 o'clock.
Oh, I'm doing good. Thank you, Judy. She's my timekeeper. I knew I needed one. I can really get into the weeds with this. Thank you, Judy. And that's the special ed. And as promised, here is the long list of special education related services that a child may receive. And if you have a child who is in a regular private preschool by parent choice, which is fine, they can still receive these services if the parent is willing to work with the school district and bring the child to, or have them Zoom in, because that's what's happening nowadays, to receive these services. Speech language service, audiology, interpreting if needed, psych services, PT, OT, recreation, counseling, medical, for evaluations only. All of this can be a related service for children with disabilities. So these can all be written into that IEP plan. Okay, and back to Corona. There's telepractice considerations to think about, right? All of this is being done mostly by Zoom right now. And a lot of 3-year-olds don't do well on Zoom, understandably so. So we need to think about that. And the thing to remember is an IEP can be written for now. And then, because the placement will be home on Zoom, right? Most of the placements will not be in a private preschool classroom setting yet. I'm anticipating soon that might happen, but not quite yet. And you can revisit that. So if you're told, oh, preschools are opening up, we've got this disease under control, we have the protocols in place to open our preschool, you can then revisit your IEP and say, let's look at my IEP, because we never did do a placement decision because we couldn't, because we were all at home on Zoom. So we need to redo the IEP, and the parents can call an IEP at any time, and the school district has to do it within 30 days. So that's your right. So remember that. So you can come up with a plan for now for an IEP, and then you can come up with a plan for later, right? And you don't have to try to think ahead. You can just do what's right for you for now, okay? Because you have the right to ask for an IEP meeting at any time, Okay. And I'll be stopping for questions in a few more slides. So give me a couple more slides. Okay. And then hang on to your questions. I'll be there, I promise. So when we talk about that least restrictive environment, okay, they really are trying to make sure that these children are in the least restrictive environment as possible, because children learn from each other. So only when the nature of the disability is such, or the needs and services are such that they really require a special classroom so that their needs can be met, will they have them in that special classroom. Otherwise, they're really going to try hard to have them in a regular, in a more inclusive setting, okay? That's really important to note. So with my older son who has cerebral palsy, what I did for his IEP, because of course he had an IEP, is he was in a speech language based preschool through the school district, because that was really important to me that he try really hard to become verbal at that point. So he was in speech language preschool. And then I had him in a regular parent co-op preschool. And I was able to split the days. So he was in preschool 5 days a week, but only a couple days were in the one and a couple days in the other. But that way he was getting that inclusiveness, that inclusivity that I thought was really important for him. And that's why I chose to do that. So you as a parent have choice. It's always your choice and what's best for your child. So remember, at these young ages, you have a choice. So take advantage of that. It's really important that you remember you have choice. Okay? And to determine what is the child's least restrictive environment, the school has to consider a general ed setting first with non-disabled peers. Now, when you're dealing with 0 to 3 to 5-year-olds, if your child is served well in an inclusive setting, they're going to be recommending probably Head Start preschools, because they have a really nice inclusive setting and they have a nice environment for those children with well-trained teachers. But there are others as well. So do know that there's other preschools that can meet that requirement. Talk to your school district, they'll know, okay? And then consider the aids and services that are needed by that child, okay? What will it take for that child to be successful in that setting, in that least restrictive setting, okay? So keep those things in mind. When they're talking about least restrictive environment, this is what they're talking about, okay? And again, when you're talking with your teams, you're talking with your people, you want to really remember, no one's against you and your child. Everyone really wants to help your child. No one goes to be a teacher because they hate kids. That's just not how it works, especially as a 3 to 5-year-olds. It's hard to hate them. They're adorable, right? So remember, you have to say thank you. It's a hard job they have, especially now. I mean, not every teacher is going to be good at Zoom. I'm learning still. So you have to remember they're trying, they're doing their best, and put things in writing, especially now. If you have a question or a concern, or if something happens, put it in writing. Email counts as writing. Put it in writing about your child. Hey, this happened while you were doing this. That concerns me. Help, Put everything in writing, because that becomes part of the record. Okay, and be respectful. They're trying, just as you're trying. So really try to find that common ground, okay? And it's okay to be assertive. It's okay to say, hey, you know what? This isn't working for my child. Let's convene another meeting. Let's talk about why it's not working. What can we do to make this work? I've had IEP meetings where I had the team agree to trial something for 6 months and then reconvene at the end of 6 months to let me know if it worked or not. That can happen. We don't know yet at these young ages what's going to be the most effective way. So you can say, you know what, I'll agree to a trial of this, but let's plan on a reconvening at this and show me the data that this worked or that this didn't work. And then you can move on. Because at these young ages, you still don't know, right? The focus needs to remain on that child, okay? And as a reminder, because these are for everybody, you have your procedural safeguards. This is for both the IFSP and the IEP. And this is how you can connect in and find out about them, okay? So this is just as a reminder. This is both IFSP and IEP. Now, questions. Let's talk about that IEP. Let's go. What are the questions?
I I thought I'd show my face so you don't feel lonely.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I don't know if there's any Q&A. I don't see any. So
Okay.
somebody will let us know, but I'll try
Not
to group.
everyone seems to be following them through chat. So, Susanna, it's your show.
All right. Go.
I'm trying to group them up so you can cover them, the topics. They're really good questions. I'm excited. So
Oh, good. And Anime, Susanna is also one of our education experts, so I may pull her in and answer them.
we're together.
That's right.
So one question that often gets confusing when you're the eligibility for IEP
Yes.
504. So there's a question of how can you get in a 504, or how does that get determined?
How is it a 504 and not an IEP? It's based on accommodations versus modifications. Okay, if your child just needs some accommodations to be successful in the classroom, then they're probably eligible for a 504 plan, not an IEP. And accommodations could be like for my son with a sensory, it was an OT. He needed to work with an OT to help regulate his body and come up with a process for regulating his body. But academically, he didn't need any modifications. He was right on target academically in terms of his pre-reading, pre-writing, all of those skills were on target. So it has to do with accommodations versus modifications. And that's kind of how you're going to differentiate which one is most appropriate.
Right. So IEP, my child requires specialized instruction.
Right.
Other services, and 504 with some accommodations, modifications,
exactly.
be able to be in the general education setting. Right?
Perfect.
Okay.
That's
good.
right. Good job, Susanna.
And that gets decided. Some get decided when you request the evaluation and you have the IEP meeting. They will let you know if you don't qualify for the IEP, but you can qualify for the 504.
Exactly.
Okay. Very good. And so then there was the next question related to that was about the placement. So what happens if, I was offered a special education exclusive placement, special day class placement. Can you disagree?
Yes, of course. You can always disagree. What you can do is say, you know what, I really want to have a more inclusive setting and with appropriate supports to try. And first of all, why? And in the preschool, it may be in a preschool setting. Remember, you don't have a typical kindergarten or preschool usually run by the school district, unless it's a transitional kindergarten, a TK. That would be the closest a school district would normally have. Generally, for inclusive placements, the school district is going to be reaching out to Head Start or reaching out to some of the other preschools that have trained teachers who teach them. Okay, so preschool is a little bit tougher with the least restrictive environment. So oftentimes the preschool settings that they have through a school district will be not inclusive. And that's just to be aware of. But if you want your child at Head Start or at a preschool that is inclusive, that is your choice. And what you can then say is, you know what, I really am going to put my child over here, but I want to make sure my child receives the support they need. But they don't have to push in a one-to-one or an ABA therapist or a speech therapist to that preschool, because now it's your choice. So now it becomes down to parent choice and the services you are willing to go out to go get. Does that make sense? Susanna, did that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's important to let people know that there is no public preschools. Regular education students, not disabled students, don't have the option for preschool unless they qualify for a Head Start program.
Exactly.
And for the IEP, or they go to public daycare, right?
Right.
So that's the reason for the placement.
Yes.
So the question was, accommodations are determined in the IEP. Yeah, we do have a more in-depth training for IEP at PHP through our education department. So I just want to invite everybody to consider attending one of the education department trainings that will go more into depth into every single part of the IEP, and also for everybody to call, right, Debbie? To call if you need to, there's more to my story. I want to ask more questions. I need to tell you
more. I have more questions.
Please call one of our specialists, also the Early Start Program specialist. They can direct you on your particular case.
Yes,
Right? So, but yes,
absolutely.
accommodations, modifications to the program are determined at the IEP meeting.
Exactly.
And then the next question was about Head Start funding. If the child, you touched on it a little bit right
Yes.
now. And somebody was here from Head Start and offered their email and contact.
Perfect.
Larissa,
Fantastic.
thank
Good.
you. So
Thank you.
please consider calling Head Start directly too as well.
Yes.
Do you have any comment
Absolutely.
on that, on how it works when your child has an IEP and goes?
Well, and what some people don't realize is that if your child has an IEP and you're pushing for an inclusive setting, Head Start is generally for families who are financially unable to pay, but they also do accept children with IEPs as part of their, so it's sometimes it's not based just on financial. So for children with IEPs, they can get into a Head Start preschool, even though they have the financial ability to pay for a private preschool, for example, if they have an IEP and Head Start is the most appropriate, and I go back to that word appropriate placement for that child.
That's right. Very good. And let me see. I think we're going good. The next question was related to private preschool versus charter services. Are they? So I think this has two parts. So a charter school is a public school. So I want everybody to understand that first, right? All public schools are
Yes.
charter schools are public schools, and they
Yes.
follow the same rules. Private schools, that there is a difference there. So the question is, are services limited? So charter schools should not be limited.
No, charter schools should not be limited. Private schools, yes.
But private school
Yes.
versus a school district determined classroom placement, there is a limit, right?
Yes, yes. And that does bring up the good point, is that there are charter preschools, you know, that go down to the preschool level. So those are always options for you as well in the public school setting. Not just Head Start. I've been calling them out because I'm remembering their name. But there are also charter schools that start at the preschool level. So you can always see if your child would qualify as that being the most appropriate setting. And again, the key words here are appropriate setting and accommodations needed for them in that appropriate setting. In a public preschool program, as charter schools are, you can have more stuff pushed in because it is public school. They are receiving public school funding.
That's the same. Yeah, it's under the school district. And then the term FAPE, free and appropriate public education, was mentioned. So
yes,
so FAPE is the offer that your school district, California Department of Education, offers you for your child, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And the least restrictive environment, correct.
Right. So
okay. And then we had somebody who had a raised hand. I wanted to make sure her question was addressed.
Yeah.
Did she unraise her hand?
I do have one more in the Q&A section here. So the question is, if a preschool child is improving academically, is the child no longer receiving the IEP services?
Okay. If the child is meeting their IEP goals and they can be found no longer eligible for an IEP if they are on par with their peers. However, if they still need accommodations to stay on par with their peers, then they would get the 504 plan. So you can move from an IEP to a 504 plan. And remember, in preschool, it's not about academics as much as heavily. A lot of it is about attention and focus. A lot of it is about language, speech and language, expressive, receptive. A lot of it is about peer interaction. Are you able to appropriately be in a classroom? And again, during the time of COVID, that one's really hard to assess. So that's why I say, if you're concerned about that, go ahead and do an IEP and reconvene when preschool's open.
That's right. So you let me know how many more questions you can take.
It's based on time. Let's see, we're at 11. I can take a few more.
Okay. So there's a question about how social emotional development is addressed in an IEP.
In an IEP? Right. Okay. So social emotional development is really key to IFSP, right? That's a real strong piece to it. In an IEP, social emotional development will be addressed if that is one of their goals. So if you're working with a child who is struggling with those peer relationships or is struggling to manage their own emotions, that can be a goal that can absolutely be addressed on an IEP. What can't be addressed on an IEP, unless it targets them academically, is the trauma that every child, I'm sure, and family is experiencing right now to being stay at home. That should be addressed in a universal classroom way. And there are specific programs for that. That's not specific to an IEP. I believe all children should receive that support right now. And there are programs out there that are for the general classroom to support them socially, emotionally, as they go through the chaos of wildfires and COVID and all the chaos we're going through right now. And that's social, emotional support for all. But that isn't necessarily an IEP thing unless it affects the way that child is able to be in a classroom, on Zoom, however. Okay, so there's a line there.
Yeah. So I understand anything that's interfering with the child's development ability should be addressed, and maybe add some goals.
Right, exactly. And you can certainly add a goal. If the child is, crying at the drop of a hat, we can add some goals on self-regulation, right? If the child is, withdrawn, you can add some goals on peer interaction. So you can really kind of support that child in those specific ways.
Right. So important, very important that those goals, any service, accommodation, anything that will be done follows those goals, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, so very good. There is some requests for some resources, like a list of, I'm writing those down, and we can include them in the follow-up email.
Yeah, and it may not be tomorrow, but I will send it out later. I promise I'll get it to you.
We'll send that. Yeah, there's a request for a list of charter schools. We do have an e-packet, so I'll make sure.
Yes, good. Thank you.
I'll write those down. Yes. Okay. And some other questions that seem to be more about, remember, you can put in writing your disagreements, right?
Yes, and, always. Everything in writing. Everything in writing. So if you don't write it down, it doesn't happen. And that's my world.
And also, we will try to add this webinar, right, Debbie?
Yes.
It's being recorded.
We are being recorded. We will. It depends.
Depends on how it. Okay, so I think we can continue for now, Debbie. I'll make note of.
Great.
Back to everybody.
Thank you. All right, those are really good questions. Thank you. I appreciate them. So now let's talk about Lexi. So we have little Lexi. She doesn't qualify for an IPP. She does qualify for an IEP. Must the parents agree to a school district preschool classroom for her? I've already answered this. I kind of cheated. But the answer is no. Remember, from 3 to 5, there is no requirement for preschools for general public. So no, the parents can say, you know what? I appreciate this offer from you, school district, but I really want to do my own thing with Lexi. I'm going to do private placement. And I may need some support from you, and I'm willing to take my child to get that support. But I'm going to do private placement, and I'm going to see how it goes. And that's perfectly fine. You do not have to agree. You do not have to take your child to that preschool placement. You as a parent have a right to say no, especially at these ages. Because again, public preschools are not a thing for children. So that kind of goes into this. So what happens then? How do I do that, right? So my child is exiting out of services by either my choice, or there's the delays have been caught up, or there's nothing noted. So early intervention worked. Yay, all done. On to the real world. But my child may still be at risk of delays. Okay, there's Head Start. There's charter schools where they have teachers who are trained early interventionists that come in. Some of the family resource centers have early interventionists that can come in and will evaluate all the children on a regular basis, like yearly, just to see how you're doing. So, and if delays are noted later, again, the parent can reconnect with that school district. It's fine. always feel like you can call. Like I said, for my youngest one, the first time they came out, they didn't note anything. I'm still like, I think there might be an issue. I called again and they came out and said, oh, you're right. There is an issue. I'm seeing it now. Now I can see it. And then they did what they had to do. So you can always call back. Okay. And so if you're doing parent choice, what do you look for in an inclusive preschool? Okay. So how do I know what's a good inclusive preschool? So there's Head Start, of course. And through Head Start, it is the Early Learning Services Department has some guiding principles. And here's their website. You can take a peek here at their Head Start program. You can also, like we talked about, there's charter schools, and Susana will send a list. But here's what to look for if you're looking just privately. You want to know what to look for in an inclusive preschool? Here's a website, and you'll get this in your resources tomorrow. I know that. Here's what to look for in an inclusive childcare. This is a list that you can take and kind of, is this an inclusive childcare? Would this be an appropriate placement for my child? And if you're renting a preschool, if you're renting and you're trying to figure out, I need ideas for making it more inclusive, how do I include more people? These are some really great resources. I love these resources. I use them all the time. Kara's Kit and Pete's Suite. They're both available through the Division of Early Childhood Education bookstore. They're really cheap, $25-$30 each. And they give you a list of things to consider to make your preschool more inclusive for specific children. And they're really easy things to implement and do. And I really, really do love these two resources. So I encourage you to take a peek at those if you have a chance. And if our library was open at PHP, you could borrow them, but sorry. You'll just have to spend the $25-$30. And you as a parent have a voice and have a choice. And so if you want to get more involved, I was always very involved in my kids' preschools. Like I said, my oldest son was in a parent co-op preschool. That way I was present and I could assist the other parents and the teacher in inclusion of him easily because I was there, right? It's a parent co-op. Not all parents have that option. I get that. But you can always just volunteer when you can in your child's preschool classroom, like once a week, go in, make a point. There's advisory board meetings you can be a part of. And there's also a very active community here in Santa Clara County called StrongStartSantaClara.org. And that's a great place to find out what's going on in helping all children get a really strong, firm start. And also, again, we have our Parents for Change advocacy group coming up to train parents on how to be advocates and have a voice and make choices and make change in the schools and in the systems that serve our children. So again, I'm going to push that because I think that's a fabulous opportunity for our parents. Okay, questions. Let's go back to more questions and then I'm ready for wrap up.
I'll see if more questions roll in.
Nothing in the Q&A section here.
Okay. If you want to get technical, there was a question here that I think I missed last time. Sorry, but I wrote it down. Is the difference between an IEE, Independent Education Evaluation, is that part of due process? Was a very specific question.
I'm not sure. I know that you can get an IEE, but I'm going to ask you to answer that, Susanna.
That's a tricky one. So I wanted to suggest to call the education department to see their specific case because it could be as a result of a disagreement that went to due process or not. It could be
it just depends
with your assessment results, and you could disagree with parts of the assessment or all of it. So it's really individual based on the individual case, right?
Yes, so every child is different.
That's a quick answer, but hopefully that helps.
Call us. Call us is the short answer on that one.
We'll share the site for Strong Start. Do you have the site?
Yeah, that's in the resource list. That's in the resource list. Yeah, that's a really great organization. And then if you come to our resource fair, we are going to have Santa Clara County Office of Ed took over childcare information and referral for this county just recently, and they're going to be coming to the resource fair. on September 19th. So if you have questions about inclusive childcare and how to find it for your child, that's your resource. They can help you with that for inclusive childcare and inclusive preschool, and they'll be present so you can get more information from them if you attend that resource fair.
Awesome.
By Zoom.
Yes, virtually. Yes, and Brenda added the link again for everybody about the resource fair.
Terrific. Okay.
It's a Saturday, so it's
Saturday, September 19th for only 1 hour, 10 to 11. So not everybody's there, of course, but we tried to get a good breadth of resources.
That's right.
All right.
And I think I don't see any more questions rolling
Okay,
in, so.
well, I'm just going to end here then because I'm pretty much done. You have my email address in the chat somewhere. So feel free to email me or email info@php.com with questions. And there is a raised hand. Can someone, Tricia, go ahead and put it in the chat? And we can make sure we can get that question answered, Tricia. Or can I just unmute you? I don't know if you're comfortable with that. Tricia, did you get your question answered? Is it in the chat or Q&A at this point?
I'm not seeing it here, but.
Okay.
Let's see. She's typed yes.
Oh.
To unmute? Okay. So let me find her and unmute her.
No, I can be unmuted.
Okay.
Maybe just the unmute, maybe.
I'm finding her. Okay, I'm going to allow you to talk, Tricia. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you for this. This was very informative. This question technically wasn't part for 3 and above, so I didn't ask, but I figured you might be able to give some guidance. If I have a 2-year-old toddler with autistic-like behavior that I had placed in a school-based daycare,
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind being transparent and sharing this because this might help other parents. He kind of was. I was told from the beginning it wasn't a good fit, and I would like to say I advocated for my son, and I do believe we experienced some mistreatment. So he was only there for 3 weeks. And I did the best thing was to remove him and take this week off to figure out the next best options. Do you recommend? Well, more so, I'm just trying to figure out how to go about. Is it worth having my child in like a setting to be around other kids to try to help him interact socially? Are like daycares not really required to want to at least see if they can customize care to just make him feel included, or kind of where to go? You know what I mean? Because he's not free. But at the same time, he was mistreated, and I can, you know what I mean? So it's kind of
well, first of all, is your child being served? Have you had your child evaluated by the Early Start program?
Yes, we did all that, and luckily everything worked out in the time of COVID, which is great. So we just got started.
Fabulous. Wonderful. Okay, because that's step 1. Step 2 would be contact the Santa Clara County, and I have this resource coming out to you tomorrow, the Santa Clara County Child Care Referral Line, and you can email them or you can call them.
Okay.
And they have a list of childcares that have been through inclusive training.
Okay.
And you also have, and actually, Tricia, make sure you give to one of us your email, because we have an e-packet on inclusive childcare in Santa Clara County. We can email that to you with additional information.
Thank you so much. You just made me smile.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Is there any other questions?
No.
Nothing in Q&A.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank everybody for your time and attention. I think this was a great webinar, lots of interactivity, and I really appreciate your attention. And again, if you have any questions about anything, or if you want to review anything after you get all the resources tomorrow, feel free to connect with us. That's what we're here for. Okay?
Okay, I'm gonna take 1 second here and thank everyone also for spending this time. Our time's coming to a close, and Debbie's going to be sending you a follow-up list of resources. We've mentioned that several times. I will also be sending you a follow-up evaluation of our time here, and
please fill out the poll.
Okay, wait a second. I got a poll here I got to do right now. Hold on.
Fill out the poll.
Hold on, I was so busy
We
with
always
the
forget the poll.
Okay, we got a poll. We're going to post the poll right now. Please answer.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a 2-question poll. Please fill it out. We appreciate you doing that. Thank you very much. And it was wonderful to share with you today.
We're going to give 1 minute here for the polls.
Oh, yeah. Let's
I
get that
appreciate
poll.
it. That's great.
Yes, thank you. Poll, very fast, very easy.
Yay.
And we remember, Judy, because we always forget.
All those important wrap-up stuff.
Oh, I know. My goodness.
I'm just going to give a shout out next Wednesday, more for professionals, not so much for parents, on how to provide virtual services. So again, people who are providing telehealth or teletherapy. Sarah Peters from C-Slot will be presenting.